So in this week's market update, I want to go over what many people are calling Crypto Week, where Donald Trump has put forward 3 new acts which are going to be changing the crypto space forever. And I want to consider in this video what these 3 acts are, what you need to know about them, and how they're going to affect us as crypto investors. So the first act that Donald Trump's put forward is what's being called the Genius Act, which is the Guiding and Establishing National Innovation for US Stablecoins Act, aka the Genius Act. And what it means is, in essence, any kind of US-based stable coins that are decided by the US, such as the US dollar Tether, US dollar Circle, are being backed 1-to-1 with the US dollar, meaning the US dollar Tether is permanently pegged to the US dollar. Now, before we go further, any kind of stable coin is a digital currency which is basically backed or pegged by a commodity, or in this case, currency. What it does is basically a few things. By backing these stable coins with the US dollar, it makes the US the leaders in digital asset. Their coin or their currency is now considered the reserve asset of the crypto space as well as in the world as a currency. So they're making themselves leaders in the digital space. Second thing it does, it's protecting consumers in the digital market, because now we know which stable coins are backed by the US, and we know which ones to use in general in exchange, which the main 2 are the US dollar Tether and the US dollar Circle. And now we have legislation to back that. Next thing it does is it ensures the US global status as the reserve currency. We already know how it is as the reserve currency in the world, and now it's going to be considered the reserve currency in the crypto space. And it means demand is going to continue to increase for the US dollar, and maybe it might increase its lifespan just a bit more. For us consumers, it means 3 main things. It means we've got transparency and safety, because the US have told us which stable coins they have now backed. It gives us greater accessibility and it gives us greater peace of mind. So clearly, as an investor in the crypto space, it just means now we've got a lot more trust in the space, and we now know which stable coins are backed purely by the US. If you really want me to go into more detail, I think it's trying to throw a lifeline for the US currency. We know that there's a huge amount of dumping in treasuries right now as people are moving away from the US dollar towards assets like gold. And by doing this, the US wants to try and keep demand in their reserve currency as the lifespan of this currency ends. I guess it's really funny how the US is back in the US dollar Tether, as Tether surpasses Germany as one of the largest US treasury holdings. I think Germany is considered one of the 7th or 6th largest holders in treasuries, and now Tether has passed them. So it's in the interest of the US to protect themselves, and that's what this Genius Act really is. In my opinion, what it's doing is it's trying to protect the US currency from its demise. I think maybe it gives it an extra year because there's more demand, but at the end of the day, as we continue to print, it's going to continue to going down. And Tether, it doesn't matter if it's backed by the US dollar. At the end of the day, it's being backed by something that continues to be printed over and over again. The next one, number 2, is the Clarity Act. And the Clarity Act is basically, as the name says simply, it provides us clarification on what standards are in digital assets and gives us, I guess, a threshold on what a security is, what a commodity is, and what a digital asset is. As you can see through this definition, basically, we've got an understanding on certain definitions, and as well as who's in control of certain areas. It also requires crypto businesses to be able to register themselves as exchanges, as brokers, and it means that there's a bit more legislation involved in the process and a bit more rules. Again, I think the Clarity Act is pretty similar to the Genius Act. What we're seeing is a bit more rules being put in place and more clarity, and it means crypto businesses that are coming into the space now have more rules to follow, and it's just a bit more clarity. So it's helping them out and it's helping us out to understand who's legitimate and who's not. It also helps institutional investors who, I guess, want to understand the rules at play. There's a bit more law behind it as well, and we could see more big players coming into the space. As always, it helps retail investors and US innovation, as more people can now come into this space with a few more rules behind us so we know what's going on. So as a crypto investor, that only means that we're going to be seeing more embracement of cryptocurrency, and we're going to see Bitcoin continue to go on the rise. That being said, the Clarity Act did have a lot of division. As you can see here, this was its chance of it going through, and there were a lot of mixed opinions on this. Some people not liking some of the DeFi technology, rules being put in place, and clarity in that aspect. So this one was easily the most divided. There's a lot of mixed thoughts on this one. However, for me, honestly, it just means that we're just going to have a bit more clarity going forward, as the Act says, and we've got a few more rules in place. I'm not too concerned about this one. I'm more so concerned about the third law, which I'm going to be mentioning next. And that, of course, is the Anti-CBDC Surveillance State Act, which basically, as Trump has put forward, is going to stop the Reserve Bank putting any kind of central bank digital currency. Now, a central bank digital currency is any kind of cryptocurrency which is controlled by a reserve bank of a nation. For example, the Fed in America, if they brought their own digital currency. Here in Australia, we have the Reserve Bank of Australia. If they produced a digital currency, that would be considered a CBDC, which is a central bank digital currency. And I guess the reason why this is because people fear the idea of a central system controlling the digital currency. And that's kind of why we get into Bitcoin, gold, and silver in the first place, because we want to move away from government control and have money in our own hands. And Trump's essentially tried to stop this happening. However, the key issue, I guess, with it is this. It's only based on Congress who stops the Fed from being able to move this forward. And I fear that eventually down the line, Congress will give the nod to some kind of central bank digital currency, either through Trump himself or when we have some kind of other presidency through Biden, who in the past has already advised the Fed to do research into building some kind of central bank digital currency. And the fear is that eventually there's going to be some kind of tyranny where they're going to have full control of a central currency, and we're going to be forced to follow rules on how we spend. I mean, you don't have to look that far in history to see the fears we saw, like Trudeau did back in 2022, the anti-mandate truck drivers, when they refused to get vaccinated, what happened there, as accounts were frozen and spending was controlled. And I feel like if a central bank digital currency came in, a similar scenario would happen. Honestly, as a whole, here's what I see from these three acts. I see it as a three-step process which is going to happen going forward. Honestly, these acts act as an intermediary between a central bank digital currency, where firstly, we're going to see the US continue to print more money to continue to prop up their economy, as they've got no choice to. It's like taking drugs. They continue to print more and more. Secondly, I think what's going to happen is we're going to see stable coins act as an intermediate step before we go to a central bank digital currency. People don't trust a central bank digital currency, and I think they know that. So they need an extra in-between step to be able to get to that. I think stable coins are the perfect solution to that, and having a private company control these coins before we go to that. And now that they're pegged to the US dollar, it kind of means they're under solid control from the US. And then thirdly, I think eventually we will see a central bank digital currency coming in some form. Hopefully we can see eventually that gets backed by some kind of asset or commodity such as Bitcoin, gold, and silver. But what I see from these laws is that we're moving towards that step, even though this anti-CBDC has been put in place. But going forward, the crypto space continues to grow. It clearly means that we're moving in this direction, and that moving towards Bitcoin as a decentralized asset continues to be critical. And it's an asset that I'm going to be continuing to focus on in my portfolio. And personally, I think you should be looking at that as well. So these are the three bills that got put in Crypto Week, and this is what you should be focusing on going forward. Do your research, understand what's going on, and I hope you enjoyed this video.